Which icons from the worlds of Sega and arcade games do we most want to emulate in our own lives this new year? This is the first in a 5-part New Year's bonus series that we'll be releasing every Friday this January. We plan to see which video game characters we find most iconic and which ones we want to emulate in our own lives this year. I am your host one today. I'm TJ Blackwell. I am here with the lovely James Demmell, and of course Laura Wittman, who will be joining the show more frequently from now on, and we want to incorporate her more. But to get started, I wanted to ask you, Laura, what one person do you have that you look up to as an icon of sorts?
I think currently my icon is Lorelai Gilmore. It's like a current re-obsession that comes around every once in a while where I have to watch all of Gilmore Girls in its entirety for like the millionth time. But no matter how many times I watch that show, I still just look up to Lorelai. I'm amazed by what she can do with her life as like a single mom and how she keeps things together and accomplishes so much. So she's my icon right now and who I want to be when I grow up, although I'm older than her now. So the character. Yeah.
What about you, James? One icon.
One icon, man. I'm going to go with fictional character this time, having thought about it more. And I'm going to go with my systematic geekology avatar, Monkey D. Luffy. Specifically, the couple scenes that he has where he doesn't want to share food with people. He doesn't want to be a hero, rather, because it means he'll have to share his food with people. And he wants all the food for himself. And so he's so selfish, and yet somehow seems to do so much good wherever he goes.
Yep.
And so
he would never do a bad thing to anybody.
He doesn't want to be a hero because heroes are full of themselves.
Yeah, but he does not want to be a hero.
He just wants
to save everyone on the planet.
Exactly. Right. But
Don't
he
call
doesn't
him a
want
hero.
time. And you know what? That's respectable.
Yeah, I get it. My icon, full disclosure, this is the second time we've tried this because the first time my internet was bad. What I'm going to keep my answer the same. Will Rose, really, I look up to Will Rose a lot. He pursues everything in his life with such fervent passion. Like, he's so excited to do everything. And I want to be more like Will when I grow up.
Yep.
So I think as we go through this episode, that will be a bit of a trend. That's the kind of thing I'm looking for in like a gaming icon is determination. But
okay.
Now, if you're on a laptop, please consider rating and reviewing the show on Podchaser, GoodPods, whatever you like to put your critique out on. That helps our show gain recognition, and it makes it easier to find in search engines. Of course, if you're on your phone, you can do it through Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anything like that. Thank you to Austin Nance. He is one of our Patreon supporters. Austin, we could not do the show without you, and if you'd like your own shout-out, you can support our show for as little as $3 a month. So, since this is the first in the series, there's not a playlist yet, but next Friday, come back for more of the video game icons. So, today we are going over the icons of Sega and the arcade, which we put together not because they're too small, but because there's really just a ton of overlap here. Like, so many of Sega's properties started out in the arcade, or so many Sega properties got arcade like cabinets, and that's kind of a thing. And we're going to go over which characters are the most iconic to us personally, and we're going to cover a little bit of what we think the mainstream answers are going to be for this. So we're going to start with our number 3 pick for iconic character, and we could do it like a separate list for arcade and a separate list for Sega, but I think we can get by with mixing them if you can choose. So, James, do you have your number 3 personal iconic character?
Yeah, my number 3 personal iconic character has very little to any plot or narrative behind them. I'm assuming this person is a male. I don't want to gender them, but I'm assuming that they're male. And it is Dig Dug, the arcade game Dig Dug. I think I had, like, the way I got sort of mostly into arcades games was I think I had like an old collection for like the N64, like way back in the late 90s, that had just like a collection of like retro, I guess even retro then, arcade games. And I love Dig Dug. And it was my icon. And the thing that I want to, I guess, lift up about Dig Dug, very little plot, you just dig. And you try and find your enemies and not let them find you. And you just pump them full of air and watch them explode. And, I think for me, I love that game so much because it was simple and it didn't break my brain, which I think is one of the strengths, for me at least, about most arcade gaming, is that they were simple. You could pick them up and put them down. You're not tied to these characters for like 10 games in a row. And so, yeah, that's my number 3.
Yeah, I feel like that was part of the struggle of designing a good arcade game, was that it had to be simple enough to get you into it and make you want to keep playing it. And I feel like most of the arcade games I have played achieved that really well. Tron, however, feels like the challenge is for you to not lose money while you're trying to figure out how to play Tron. I don't know. I just tried a Tron arcade cabinet for the first time like last year, and it took me at least $1.50 to figure out how to win any of the games.
Not $1.50 compared to the prices of modern video games.
Yeah, it's rough.
I mean, the goal of all of them is to use as many quarters as possible.
Right.
That's how they get you.
Yeah. So what about you, Laura? What's like your history and your number 3 pick? Let's go for it.
Ooh, my history is that I'm old enough to remember going to arcades. So the year 2025 is the year in which I turned 40. So it's a tough year for me. So be in prayer for my soul and my well-being as I cross over to my 40s. And I remember actually going to the arcade. So, back in my day, we would go to the mall and we would get our Sbarro pizza, and then we would get our quarters and we would go over to the arcade because there was always an arcade in the food court. And so my love of arcades was like innate and built into my history as a kid and my entire existence. We were also a console family. So every console that came out, we had in our house eventually. We were that family. And I remember when the Sega came out. So this is a tough breakdown for me because it's a huge part of my childhood to bounce between both. But my number 3 is Sonic the Hedgehog, and he's kind of an honorable mention in this, but he has to be in there because he was a huge part of my childhood. I know I've shared this in another episode, but my cousins used to come over every summer. We'd spend the whole summer together. And so it was Mario and Sonic. That was our thing. So Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yeah, that's fair. Sonic is a tier above if we're talking about mainstream icons. It's like maybe number 3 in the world, I would say.
Yeah, he's got to be up there for sure. Like most recognizable video game characters, especially with Mario.
And the new movie is out, and it's really good. You should definitely see it for sure. But I think the thing I love about Sonic, especially when it first came out, we didn't know a lot about like his personal character. We've gotten more character since there was, the movies that have been out and everything. But I think what was so cool about Sonic back then is, number one, the coin system was different than Mario or any other like side scroller. You collected coins. If you got hit, you were still alive and you could keep going and collect your coins. That was great for me. That was also a time in which Game Genie came out. And so, we had like Game Genie and you could cheat your way through Sonic as well. So that was also a big help for me growing up. But the coin system, I also loved how when you get to the end, all the little animals scurry out. So there's this, obviously he's an animal rights activist as a hedgehog himself. And that's something that I think, we should all aspire to. So he taught us a lot,
Mm-hmm. Right. He does also commit a good bit of violence against other animals. So
that's true. But robotic animals, you know,
most of the time.
So yeah. But they come back.
They do come back. They always come back. Shout out SBO. Jet the Hawk. But for me, I'm a young kid. Most of my exposure to arcades early was plug and play TV games, that kind of thing. And then, when Dollar General started selling the $40 Sega Genesis. We got that, of course, and I could play all of the Genesis games. And I had a blast. It was a great time. Going from like 8th gen to 6th? No. 5th? I don't know. But super fun to do that. And I wanted to go over really quick the point of the series, which is emulation, which I just think is kind of clever because we're talking about games. And we're not talking about Nintendo in this episode. So we're safe there. But the point of our Icon series is to choose something to emulate from the characters, and if necessary, something to emulate from the characters, which we do not want to be anything like. Hopefully, we're choosing a bunch of good, wholesome mascots, and we don't have to do that, but I'm definitely choosing at least one where there are some character concepts you might not be comfortable with.
Same for me.
Yeah. So, for my number 3, like Sega Arcade icon, I feel like I just came up with this today when I was putting together the slideshow because I found out about some of Sega's child companies, subsidiaries, I guess. But apparently Sega owns Yakuza.
Oh, interesting. Okay,
Yeah, I didn't know that.
cool.
So
I'm not surprised by that.
I want to go ahead and just put Kazuma Kiryu on there as my number 3 because I think modern times he's up there. Like people my age at least are big fans of, or at least have been exposed to Yakuza, and they know who Kiryu is, or at least Ichiban.
I'm not super familiar with this series. Is he like the main character in like every one of those Yakuza games?
The first 3.
Okay.
And Like a Dragon and the Like a Dragon sequel.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, but I love him as a character. I'll start off with the immolation. I think being part of organized crime is bad.
But I feel like Yakuza stuff is like its own, like, kind of weird, unique category of organized crime.
Yeah, it's
really do bad, but they also do good. So, like,
yeah.
Anyways,
maybe you're right. Maybe I should join the Yakuza.
Japanese culture.
That's the lesson from this. That's good. Yeah.
Pastor James Demmell told you to join organized crime.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
tell my bishop.
As far as being like Kiryu, he, despite the fact that he is heavily involved in the Yakuza and is actively participating in some unsavory activities, throughout his story, he just continually shows such kindness and fun-lovingness. I don't know, if you've never played Yakuza, you should definitely do it. You get to be this tough, manly Japanese gangster and then go do karaoke as him. It's a great time.
I feel like this game could heal my toxic masculinity.
It might help a lot.
Awesome. I need that. We all need that. Yeah.
But he just always stands out to me because he's, break some kneecaps, steal some money, extort some business owners, save a kitten out of a tree, help a guy with his coconut stand. I love him. He's special. And if you've never played the Yakuza games, please do. That's
definitely adding it to my list right now.
Yeah. Also, the Yakuza Like a Dragon is super, super fun if you don't like beat 'em up kind of games. Like a Dragon took Japanese gangsters, beat 'em up, and turned it into a JRPG. Which is a great idea and really fun. So, number 2, personal iconic character from Sega or the arcade. James, what do you
want? I went with Shadow the Hedgehog here, as we see on our screen. I knew someone else was going to do Sonic. And, Sonic, as we've learned about his character, he's just the eternal happy-go-lucky optimist. And when Shadow the Hedgehog was introduced, he was what I want to say is a much-needed foil to the character of Sonic, right? Edgy, tortured past, questionable morals. And for me, when Sonic Adventure 2 came out, what was that, 2001, 2, somewhere in there, I was like right at 10 years old. to date me. And, I was coming into my adolescence and I really resonated with a character who was a little bit, edgy. When Shadow the Hedgehog, the standalone game came out, and Shadow was just, blitzing people with speed and teleportation and weapons of mass destruction. That was fun for me. That was fun because, like Sonic games were safe. You didn't feel bad playing a Sonic game. It wasn't Call of Duty. I mean, come on. But you still got to get your murder on, and it was healing for my teenage soul. I had a lot of feelings back then, and so I love Shadow just because I think he's just such a. He's a character that exudes sort of like cool. I think this most recent Sonic movie really benefits from his sort of addition and him being a central character. I'm not going to spoil that movie. If you haven't seen it, you definitely should. I think it's the best one so far. I think Keanu Reeves does a great job as Sonic. So it was great and loved it. And Shadow will always be beloved in my heart. I love his character development across his games and how he sort of works that out, but still somehow maintains this edginess that he has. I'm playing the Sonic Shadow Generations right now, so he's sort of been Sonic and Shadow have been on my mind. So what I would emulate from him is his sort of no nonsense attitude and the way he does things. He is about his business and he handles his business very effectively. And, he does show, I think, across his games, some willingness to reassess and to change. And I think we all need that in our lives. We can get so locked in. I think Shadow realizes that he's been trapped in some false narratives and does some inner, work on himself, which is important. And what I would emulate, about Shadow is just, the mass murdering. He's ruthless to the point of, he takes care of business a little bit too effectively, one might say. And so, want to rein that in.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
It was really fun for me as a kid to at the time that I got Shadow the Hedgehog, the game, I had really only played maybe a little bit of Sonic Adventures 2 and Sonic Riders.
Yeah.
So I started playing Shadow the Hedgehog and I was like, oh, why does he have a gun? What's going on? But that was a great time to be 6.
Yeah.
It's funny though, because my husband and I were talking about this the other day, and our generation was Sonic and Tails and Knuckles. So a lot of these other things didn't come along until we were adults. So I didn't have as much experience. I know who they are, who these other characters are because of my kids, but I didn't have as much personal experience with them. But I love the way Shadow is characterized in the new movie. And I definitely, again, to keep giving a sales pitch for it, people should definitely see it.
Yeah, the kids call that aura.
Yeah. Yeah. As I like to tell my kids, you can't spell Laura without aura. So
it's true.
Wow, I bet they love that.
They hate it. That's why I say more. Double down,
Sarcasm. Yeah. No, in the movie, I'll just say when the first couple chords for Live and Learn played, I died inside. I was and I was also resurrected, and it just healed me. And I think I'm about to go see that movie a second time just by myself, without my wife. She didn't appreciate it in the same way.
Oh,
plebe. Anyways,
sorry for your loss.
He's learning.
Sorry for your loss.
So, Laura, do you have a number 2 personal iconic character from the arcade?
I do. So from the arcade, some of my arcade experience goes back to the days. Let me take you back in the past. Get in the DeLorean, hit 88 miles an hour. I'm going to take you back to my day when we would go to Pizza Hut and cash in our book coupons so that we could get our free, personal pan pizza for the Book It program. And at Pizza Inn were 2 very specific arcades, one which was my number 2 and the other one is my number 1, which I'll share in a minute. But my number 2 was the Simpsons arcade. And my favorite character was Bart Simpson. And I loved it because my grandparents hated The Simpsons, and
Yeah.
they hated that my parents let us watch it, and they just thought it was crass and terrible. So my favorite thing was to go and get my personal pan pizza and then be Bart Simpson and, hit things and do things and all of the stuff that was involved in the game. I mean, Bart Simpson is not the most admirable character in a in a cartoon or in an arcade, but at the same time, the ultimate goal in the arcade, he's still fighting for his family and, trying to get to the goal of he's a good guy, for all intents and purposes, and the protagonist of the story. But I just loved getting to do the thing. Maybe it was because it irritated my grandparents, but I loved it for that reason. And just it was one of the first times I saw something that I grew up with in a show, that was then a character in an arcade game. A lot of these other things worked the other way around because they were characters and then they became shows. But for that particular one, it was the show first. So I always loved The Simpsons, even though, again, my grandparents hated it and were very mad that my parents let us watch it. But that was that was kind of an icon of my day, was going to Pizza Hut and playing that game on the arcade. And my dad would play he would always play the jukebox, and he would always play the song "The Greatest Love of All." And so for some reason that was his one song he had to play. And so that was always in the background while I'm playing the arcade. That's a whole other thing, but we'll save that for another episode.
Yeah, I know people my age with the same quirk. Like I know a few people who have one song they always play every time they go to Waffle House.
Yeah.
Because every Waffle House still has a jukebox.
They do. And now you can
It's great.
add it to your tab at Waffle House. It's really cool.
Yeah.
No,
So
it's super fun.
Wait, John, if you're listening to this and editing, we need to do a whole a podcast or a series of podcasts on iconic video game music.
Yeah, that one's hard. That's hard.
That one is hard, right?
Because I do want to shout them out really quick. Because they do not include any icons for me. But Mortal Kombat, I think, would be on that list.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
My
But
favorite will always be the Tetris theme song. It will always and forever be stuck in my head at all times. So
Right. Laura did confide in me that she would have picked a Tetramino for this.
it's true.
If it had any characteristics.
Ah, okay. You're going to love my number one then, Laura. Let's go.
Yeah, I did want a quick shout out to Mortal Kombat because it is, so popular. It's genre defining. It was in every arcade. But I think it kind of lost a lot of steam, and I think overall Street Fighter, and I'll go specifically for Ryu. I know I included Sagat in the slide because I'm a Sagat man, but he's nowhere near as iconic as Ryu from Street Fighter or Super Smash Bros. Ultimate if you are less than 14. Which is, that's fair. That's fair. Those Street Fighter's not for kids. But Street Fighter to me is, well, it's older than I am. So there is that. Street Fighter has literally always existed. There's barely been a time since I was conscious where I didn't own some form of Street Fighter. I'm not that good at it. Better than most people. But it is so fun to go to an arcade and see the cabinets like Street Fighter 2, 3. If you're at a really nice, fancy arcade, they will even have Street Fighter 4 and 5 cabinets. If you're in Japan, they will have Street Fighter 6 cabinets, which that's awesome. I want to go to Japan just to play modern fighting game cabinets, across from other people. That's super cool. I wish arcade culture was alive in America, but that's beside the point. Ryu stands out to me because he has gone from being the absolute baseline of a character. He has gone from generic guy to, living his life, developing, losing his master, losing his family. Not as bad as Ken from Street Fighter. If you're not familiar, Ken divorced and his wife started slandering him and he lost his business.
Typical
Ken's story's
Come on.
Typical stuff. But Ryu to me has always been the picture of, if I just train, I can get better. I love that. That's exactly how I try to live. Is like, if I'm bad at something, I'm gonna do it until I'm good at it. And Ryu's the guy. And Sagat to me is cooler because maybe it's because he's bald and tall, but he's got the tiger knee. Tiger knee is awesome. But I am gonna try and emulate Ryu's determination for the rest of my life, probably, because I hate giving up. I can't stand it. And neither can he. As far as immolation, I'm going to try not to lose any fights. If I do get in fights, Ryu does lose his fights, so I'm not going to try and be like him that much.
So organized crime and street fighting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Love that for you.
I have my icons. So,
Fair enough.
Laura, do you have a number one pick for your arcade Sega icons?
I do. So this was really hard for me because there's a lot that are like top tier for me. My first arcade experience was, we had a friend who had a Miss Pac-Man arcade, like the OG back in the 80s, like Miss Pac-Man arcade that they had in their house. And we would go to their house and always play that. That was an icon for me. It's not what I picked, but it's where my love of arcades started. And I always said when I was a kid that when I grew up, I was going to have arcades all through my house. And I do. Like, we have arcade cabinets thanks to Arcade 1-Up and their like recent, sort of helping to rebuild the arcade community, which is awesome. So we have all these arcades in our house now. So it started with my love of Miss Pac-Man. It went, through the arcade in the mall and through Pizza Hut. And, my other choice that I struggled with was Turtles in Time, because I always loved that one at Pizza Hut. That was another Pizza Hut choice. And Tetris was always my favorite arcade game. And I think part of that came in being a United Methodist pastor who moves all the time. Tetris taught me how to fit lots of boxes in the back of a U-Haul properly. So, that was prepping me for life. But my number one choice actually came after consultation with my 11-year-old, who is really the better person at choosing all of these things. But I landed on Paperboy. And I think because Paperboy went through so much to deliver those papers. I mean, he's getting up every morning at 5:00 and, he's driving down the road and he's throwing those papers through mailboxes, through windows. Sometimes, dogs are attacking, bicycles are popping up out of nowhere. People are mowing their lawn and the sidewalk. The guy can't get a break. And then at the end of everything, there's an obstacle course that he has to manage to get through. And then if you don't do it perfectly, you get fired. So I just think he went through so much, and that determination and that skill and the consistency that he put into his work is really something admirable. We can all complain about our jobs and the things that we do, but I think most of us aren't running into people mowing their yard while we're just trying to do our everyday job. And he stuck with it and really just showed some determination that all of us would benefit from, at the end of the day. So.
Honestly, sounds like Gen Z and Gen Alpha need Paperboy in their life.
It's true.
Yeah, we need Paperboy resurgence bad.
That's right.
Productive obstacles.
Yeah,
Productive.
I'm technically Gen Z, so if you want to relax a little bit.
Wow, it really just showed right there. Anyways.
So, James, do you have who's your number one Sega arcade icon?
My number one is super boring. So my number one is Pong. Just the game Pong. Back and forth. Ponging it up. I chose it as my number one just because I think it is like the simplest video game that you can possibly have. Just a ball back and forth. And I think it's just, one of those recognizable sort of milestones in the history of video gaming is you want to, come to any video game at all, you kind of got to go through Pong as a first step of doing just the most most simple sort of tasks. So I would emulate its boringness in terms of, right, no narrative, no plot. But what I want to emulate in my personal life is that simpleness and that simplicity. Life gets really complicated. Our lives get so full of junk and stuff and distractions, and sometimes it's hard to keep the main thing, whatever that is for you, dear listener / viewer. So for me, I would like to sort of get back to basics and go back some of the things in my life and do the main thing better, which for me, I think I'm going to say right now is relationship. So, yeah.
Amazing.
That's me. My number one. Thank you.
That's beautiful.
I like
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you. I try. I'm a preacher, so it's all good.
I didn't expect to get a lot out of Pong, but here we are.
Here we are.
Here we are.
I think the beauty of Pong, though, too, is that it does require a relationship. You have to pay attention to what the other side is doing. And if you don't,
Thank
you're
you.
leaving, right? So, yeah, it's all about, we're making this a much deeper story than it really is, but I like it, you know?
Call and response, folks.
Yeah,
Call and response.
exactly. I support this.
Right. So for me, the most iconic arcade or Sega character kind of depends if I'm allowed to cheat or not, because Resident Evil is a
Oof.
Capcom game,
Oof.
but it released on PlayStation, and then a few months later, it released on Sega Saturn. So, I mean, if I can count Leon Kennedy, I'm going to say Leon Kennedy, but I'm pretty sure most people would not be okay with that. So, instead, I am going to go with Donkey Kong.
Okay. Classic. Yeah.
Donkey
Good
Kong.
choice.
You can't,
Yeah.
like, if you walk into an arcade that is, not catered specifically to a group, if that makes sense, Donkey Kong's probably going to be in there. Donkey Kong, to me, is ever present, and the thing that I appreciate about Donkey Kong, today's day and age, he's a big, goofy, silly guy. Back then, he was evil. He was bad. And that journey, that betterment of himself, is what I would like to emulate in 2025. Because if I can just get better personally and be more like Donkey Kong, and maybe grow like 2 feet and be more like Donkey Kong and 7 feet tall, that would be awesome, I think.
How is your how's your ability to hurl barrels? How's that going for you?
It depends. If the barrel's empty, I can get a good little
Okay.
toss.
All right. Good to know.
Yeah. Like a regular 40-gallon.
Okay. I believe
Like,
it. I can see it. Yeah.
Yeah, I can toss a barrel all right. If there's full of water, that's going to be a hard pass for me.
Yeah, that weighs a lot, like 300 pounds, I think.
Yeah, so like I can pick them up, and if I was on top of a big slope, I could roll them.
It's true.
I just, if it was full of water, I wouldn't be able to, So maybe that's what I'll do. I'll get in the gym to get more like DK. But I will also try not to throw any barrels at any people or kidnap anyone. I think that part of DK's character we can leave out. That can stay in 2024. I'm through kidnapping people and throwing storage containers at people.
That's
No more
good.
for me.
That's good.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I'm going cold turkey.
Leave your kidnapping behind in 2025, folks.
I'm
Yeah,
so tired of
come on.
walking around and having barrels thrown at me. It's
Yeah,
really difficult.
I'm going to do better. I'm going to be better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We love to
Just
see it.
If you're at the bottom of a hill, don't stay there for very long.
No more lifting barrels, just lifting his name on high.
That's all.
No.
So, are there any other iconic characters that we feel like we should mention from the arcade or from Sega? I would be remiss if, we talked about Tron a little bit. Tron, the movie got so popular, partly because of Daft Punk. A lot of people my age don't know it's an arcade game. I'm not sure if that counts as being iconic.
Pretty
But
good. Yeah.
you know, we mentioned Miss Pac-Man a tiny bit. Of course, Pac-Man is iconic. You know, Pac-Man got a, what is it called, secret mission, like
Secret
on
level.
HBO, secret level.
Yeah, yeah. It's very weird if you haven't watched it.
Yeah, the
I
Pac-Man.
mean, I guess
episode's
it's weird if you
super
have watched it. Also, just it's a weird episode.
fun. Yeah. What do you think? Is there one we missed?
So I have to. Can I share my list from my 11-year-old?
Absolutely.
Because I asked him to share his favorites, and Alan is 11, but he's an old soul. He was born in the wrong decade. So his list was really good. His number 5 was Climber, from Crazy Climber. He said that's his spirit animal, which is very true if you know my son. His number 4 was Sagat from Street Fighter because he's cool, was his reasoning. He said Miss Pac-Man, and then his reason was Reasons, which isn't very descriptive, but he's 11, so, I'll give him that. His number 2 was Paperboy, as I shared earlier, and then his number 1 was Billy Lee from Double Dragon. So that's Alan's list that I had to mention because I told him I would.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I do want Sagat is special because if you play fighting games, I assume neither of you are really into the competitive fighting game scene, but there are certain inputs that are named, like a Z input has a name, like forward, down, forward diagonal. That's Dragon Punch. That's from Street Fighter. That's normal. Sagat's known for Tiger Knee, which gets abbreviated to TK, and it's just quarter circle forward and a button. So Sagat is special. He belongs there. That's all.
I was like a million years old before I knew there were combos in any of these games. I just went to the arcade and mashed all the buttons. So
Love that. Love that.
Yeah. Well, back then you had to really try to get combos to work because they weren't
Yeah.
the mechanics yet.
Right.
It was like a whole different genre back then. It's crazy. So, how do we think our personal picks compare to what you think a normal person might say top 3 iconic characters from Sega are? What do you
Definitely Sonic has to be in there. So, or for Sega at least, Sonic has to be in there. Definitely. I think Street Fighter characters probably as well. I think we've hit those two.
for sure.
Yeah. I feel like anyone who was like a teenager, late teenager in the arcade playing Street Fighter would say Sagat, and they'd say it with like a grimace. Monster. One for Sega, I'm not sure if there's a lock for third or second, honestly.
One of my favorite games on Sega was Castlevania. So I would say that would be one I would probably harken back to. And as far as arcades go, I think games like Tapper or, Frogger, those kind of games are some definite iconic ones that other people might have mentioned for sure. So, yeah, I'm sure there's some others that I'm forgetting.
Yeah.
Right now.
We didn't name any racing games, which I feel like are a genre of arcade games that are just like super strong. I remember like my own brief experience with arcades. I played Hydro Thunder, which was like the boat racing, and then Crazy Taxi, which is like a late era arcade game, but who doesn't love Crazy Taxi, right?
Yeah, Hydro Thunder I loved on Xbox Live, not in the arcade, but Hydro Thunder awesome.
Yes.
Oh yeah. And today you can't go into an arcade hardly without seeing a Mario Kart cabinet, literally.
Yeah, that's true.
Like Mario Kart DX, those things are awesome. I love playing on those.
Yeah.
And it's way harder. Like it's just not the same game.
Yeah, I remember Cruisin' USA was always like the one.
Yeah.
That was a great one. And if they had 2 or more cabinets you can actually play together, that was the best thing, was to be able to actually race.
Oh yeah. There's a Dave & Buster's around here with 4 Mario Kart DX cabinets.
Yeah.
It's awesome. It's so good.
Are they the ones that take your picture? I know one of them are. Yeah, I remember thinking that was really cool the first time I saw those.
Yeah, it's so fun. And then Pac-Man, obviously. We did mention it, but You ask pretty much anybody for an arcade game, they're going to say Pac-Man,
Yeah.
Galaga.
Yeah.
Asteroids is a great one. That will always be one of my favorites too.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So I think arcade icon is kind of hard actually, just because like there are arcade games that were more popular, but there aren't a ton of arcade games that had a ton of character.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I would be interested to see if everyone listening would like to let us know your top 3 iconic arcade characters. Let us know. I do feel bad that I didn't mention Golden Axe because I've never not had fun playing Golden Axe on the Genesis. It's just not. It just doesn't make the list.
Golden Axe is an excellent choice, though, for sure.
Golden Axe is super fun. But that being said, we have mentioned the characteristics we're going to try and emulate. And as far as emulation goes, we are burning away the kidnapping and the mass murder, gang violence. So we're putting all that behind us.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
New year, new me.
New year, new me. No more Yakuza affiliation. I don't even know any princesses to kidnap, so
It's never too late. I mean, you're young. You got your whole life ahead of you. You never know.
all right. I'll quit in 2026.
Shout out, listeners. TJ needs a princess.
Yeah. So we are going to wrap up. And for the bonus question today, we're going to be asking which Sega game we would most like to see Wreck-It Ralph visit. If you want to hear the answer to that, you're going to have to go to Patreon, Captivate, or Apple Podcast. Laura, do you have a recommendation for our listeners today?
For Wreck-It Ralph?
No.
Oh, for that.
That's a secret thing.
I can't follow instructions. Do I have a recommendation for things for people to watch? I feel like I've said Sonic like 12 times in this episode, so they're probably tired of hearing it. You should definitely watch Sonic. Also, maybe something I shouldn't recommend, but the new season of Squid Game is really good. So that has been something I've been looking forward to. So
that is what I'm doing. As soon as we're done here, I'm going to go watch probably all of it.
Yeah. It's really good so far. I'm not finished, but what I've watched so far is really good.
Yep. All right, James, recommend us something good.
Womp womp. I got lost. I was frozen. Sorry.
Okay, you're good now.
Okay.
So, recommend us something good, James. What should all go out and listen, play, watch?
2024, I think I've said this in a couple podcasts this year, but 2024 was my year of like really getting back into reading fantasy. And so if you're familiar with the author Brandon Sanderson and his sort of Cosmere universe, I read every single one of those books this year, all of them. And the most recent book of the Stormlight Archive came out in December. It's called Wind and Truth. It was 1,300 plus pages of pure awesomeness. And if you want a good read, if you want something that's going to take you a long time and that has a long time left, like this is book 5 of a 10-book plan. So like your years to come of this like goodness, like hop into the Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson. Good stuff.
I don't know how Brandon Sanderson writes so many different worlds and so many different, like everything he writes. Like when he did his book, the book that came out, Test of the Emerald Sea, and like his Skyward series, I love like, everything he does. I don't know how he does it. It's amazing.
It's did you see the output that he has? It's crazy. He'll do like
it's insane. It's insane. No, because like if he just wanted to finish one of these series, he could.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Like if I was able to convince him to just write Stormlight Archive, we would have the other 5 books before 2030. I want that to happen so bad.
Me too. And now they're saying book 6 won't come out until like 2031 is their projection because he's going to write Mistborn Era 3. It's a long story, but I know.
Yeah, and he did always plan to take a hiatus between books 5 and 6.
Mm-hmm.
Which is tragic, but it really is one of the greatest fantasy series out right now.
Meanwhile, all the Game of Thrones fans are like just waiting for all eternity for another book that will never get it, but it's fine.
I'm also a big Patrick Rothfuss fan, so
My wife got me The Name of the Wind. I think that's the first one for Christmas, and I'm very excited.
I have the collector's edition with the red pages, so it's beautiful. Yeah, I guess I should recommend something. I'm just going to re-recommend that you read the Stormlight Archive specifically. It's so good.
Do it.
And if you are on a laptop, please consider rating us, reviewing us. Podchaser, good pods. If you're on your phone, thumbs up, thumbs down, 1 star, whatever you want. Shout out to Austin Nance. Yeah, I like to hear criticism personally. But thank you, Austin Nance, for helping us keep our lights on and our internet functional. And this is the first episode of our Gaming Icon series. Following this, we will have a playlist with all the other episodes. And I am filling in Will Rose's shoes today. It feels like stepping into the shoes of a clown. There's so much space. And I know Will could do it better than me. But remember, we are the Priest Geeks. Or Geek Priests. So,